What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin.
And we have an album review for you, and this will easily be the grossest thing we go over this week, for sure. There's not anything remotely close. And I'm not just talking about the album art. So today we are going over the latest offering from Pissgrave, Malignant Worthlessness. This also comes out on the 21st of February on Profound Lore Records. This band formed in 2013 in Philadelphia. This is their third album overall. I got into them with their debut album, Suicide Euphoria, which, if you're looking at the album cover, I like to call that one Bathtub Stew, Now with Bones. And I think I even brought up their second album, Posthumous Humiliation, which I call Chili Face, in a collection update. And this band is, well, as gross as their album covers, which this one features something that is definitely not a rotisserie chicken in a bed of wild rice. It's something else less tasty. But this band has almost kind of got legendary status, partially due to the album covers, but also for being just absolutely insanely heavy.
This is the first album by this band that I've actually sat and listened to all the way through. Mostly because the record before it, we'll just call it Chili Face, was virtually almost unlistenable. Like, I sat down and wanted to hear a track. We brought them up in a stream that we did as far as like gross album covers or something, and I wanted to check it out, and I turned it on and I was like, what the fuck, and turn it back off. So yeah, this would be the first time I sat down with this band, and I'll be honest, it was a lot more than I expected it to be.
Yeah, honestly, even for me, I've been listening to this band for a while now. This is easily their most dynamic album, and I'll be honest, like, it's flat out catchy in spots. Which I'll say that the first album had definitely its catchier moments. The second album, maybe underneath all the TV static and animal growling or whatever was gnawing on the microphone at the time, there was probably something more catchy in there. But this one feels as though like dynamics and riffs really were the main thing, and they kind of just let the atmosphere take care of itself, which with this band it generally does. Now, in terms of what I expected from this band, they once again delivered on that. It's fast-paced, lots of just heavy blasting, distant, atonal, ugly riffs. The guitar tone is sizzly and distorted. There sounds like there's a static hum behind everything. And then you have the vocals. The vocals are horrifying. They sound like, like a cancerous raccoon barking over a broken PA system, or someone choking a velociraptor over a walkie-talkie.
Or if the Tasmanian devil had COPD.
Yeah, it's all of those things. And they are layered, they are blended, they are distorted, and they are absolutely terrifying. But underneath that, this time, there's a lot more in the way of clever riff structure, which again is something that I really wasn't expecting on here. Not saying that these guys are bad musicians. It's just, man, the last album was such a battering ram of just horrifying noise, I would say bordering close to war metal, that I wasn't expecting a lot of dynamics on here. But there are killer riffy moments on here of like catchier tremolos, solid grooves, the title track, and heaping pile of electrified gore. That's a fun one. Yeah, there's like catchy grooves like Morbid Angel tremolos, albeit, they sound like those same tremolos you would hear on, Altars of Madness, except someone decided to like dunk them in a deep fryer. And all this kind of whirled around this just distant, staticky, gross atmosphere. But again, there's like a little bit of murk peeled off of this, kind of like the layer of outer skin on the cover. It's chicken skin. It's totally chicken skin.
Now, albeit, I'm going to be honest, when this record first started, when I first heard what I heard, off the bat, until my ear had a chance to kind of really acclimate to things, it was mostly just drums and a guy gargling, I don't know, glass and nails and toenail clippings and whatever, and I couldn't make anything out. But I'll tell you what, the tremolos really cut through. And as the record got on, as we got down to things like the title track or Dissident Amputator, which is downright brutal, I mean, we're talking suffocation type gross, it took me a minute for my ear to go, okay, all right, there is riffing going on, and there's an absolute ton of it.
Again, with their earlier albums, I didn't really get like a lot of these dynamics, maybe more so with the first one. But, in terms of like changing, riffs over it was almost, again, like just a constant barrage. And if there was a riff changeover, it was kind of hard to make it out through all the just horrifying static and noise. Like, seriously, it was like listening to like incantation and also like the audio file of a snuff film at the same time. But here, I can really pick out like distinct riffs this time. Like 3 Degrees of Darkness, there are some absolutely killer like hammer-ons that are harmonized in there, and you can make them out clear as a bell. There's even some really cool harmonized riffs on Interment Orgy, which that's a good way to put the fun back in Funeral. But that one has like more of a straightforward Morbid Angel vibe. And honestly, when they, I would say like palm mute the riffs a little bit, it kind of lets the atmosphere settle down, which by atmosphere, mostly I just mean the static drone in the background, which might be the bass. It could just be all the feedback and the guitars.
Could be all the feedback from the vocal mic, too. When you're doing whatever it is he's doing to that microphone, you're going to get some sort of noise that you didn't plan on.
It sounds like they're inside of the microphone screaming.
Yeah.
One of the things that I actually enjoyed about this, certainly wasn't the album cover, was the fact that this still feels like what Pissgrave does. It's just more dynamic. Like, I don't know if I'd call it more listenable, because this still sounds just gross and gnarly. Like, I mean, the sound of this is like, take this album cover and then pour the stew, the gravy on the first album's cover and just kind of let it marinate, and then you would have the appropriate sickness and thickness to it.
Oh my God.
Oh, dude, you can almost smell that, right? Don't worry, I'm like 70% sure that this album cover is not a scratch and sniff.
I hope not. I hope none of those album covers are scratch and sniff, I'm going to be honest with you. Now, I know we've said a bunch of wild-ass things about how this record sounds, but this is actually Arthur Risk production, and when you think about that, it makes sense. Like, that man has an uncanny ability, whereas if a band says, we want to make this record sound disgusting, he says, okay. The sizzle that's over everything, the static, the vocals sound wet. They sound like gargling, I don't know, guts and blood and screaming over that. And whatever the hell is going on in the atmosphere, there's even some like creepy muttering of something. I don't know what the hell they're saying. But in Heaping Pile of Electrified Gore, a song that's already pretty disgusting from the get-go, yeah, in the end of that, it's just got this weird, like, mumbled, like, and it goes in and out of the mix, too. Like, it's almost like it's circling around your head, and then just, like, it's really close, and then it's really far away, and you're like, oh my God. And that describes the atmosphere for about 90% of this record.
You know, that muttering might actually be, like, the recipe for the chicken that's on this album cover.
I don't know.
You probably have to play it backwards to get the recipe for the wild rice. For what this band was going for, Arthur Risk more than likely captured it. I can't imagine they were going for anything less than like, hey, I want this to sound like a 90s death metal demo, except the dog chewed on the tape and it's kind of difficult to play back. But there are points where like the sound kind of like phases in and out again, like you said. In Interment Orgy, there's a point where I feel like the low end drops out and it gets really crisp for a second.
Yeah,
And
just for a moment though.
Yeah, and it just kind of makes you wonder, like, what is going on? Like you're actually listening to it in an old tape and like somehow that part of the tape got fucked up. And of course there's the end of the album, Mystical Obscenities, which fades on, whatever. I don't know. It gets louder and louder and it gets more distorted, and it's just like they took the song and were like slowly feeding it into a wood chipper or something. And honestly, it's probably the most appropriate way for this album to end. But the interesting thing about that song is up to that point, it oddly sounds cleaner.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it was like me adjusting to the sound at that point. Like, no, this sounds fine now.
It's
or
like
it was a production trick.
Yep. I mean, or it's like I was talking about earlier. With albums that sound like this, because I will admit, when this first started, I was like, I can't hear a damn thing. But as your ear gets used to the production overall, it becomes easier to hear. It's weird. It kind of faded out like it faded in, because when this record started, it was just immediate chaos. Couldn't hear shit. And then at the end, it's like taking all the instruments and tying them to the back of a truck and dragging them through a gravel pit. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what was happening. This band obviously keeps costs low by playing unbroken shit.
But to their credit, they make it sound pretty damn good. Like, there's a lot of, like, fun, clever riffs. There's even some more technical spots on here. We're like, all right, that's a really interesting, fiercely atonal harmony. Ignominy Putrefaction in particular, I love the end of that song where it just sounds like you were spiraling into madness. Yep. It's some of the most unsettling melodies on the entire album. Melodies, air quotes. I feel like I need to use that for, like, every fucking song on here.
Yeah, they're melodies, but not really.
In the loosest sense of the word. Loose like the skin on that rotisserie chicken. Looks like it's just fallen off. It's been underneath that light at the grocery store for a while, huh? As far as saying, like, negatives on here, all right, the production does take a while for you to kind of, like, get used to it, I'll be honest, but it's an improvement over the last one, which honestly isn't saying much because the last one's production was pretty awful. But, I mean, like, this is like a weird gradient scale with this band in terms of, like, good production to bad production, because anyone that doesn't like this style of death metal is just going to say, dude, this sounds like shit. But, honestly, I think this production's a lot better in a way. It's still tough to listen to. And there's barely any space between these tracks. Like, it is one after the other. Luckily, there's a little bit more dynamic in terms of, like, how songs will start. Like, you get, like, a muffled sort of, like, distorted sound at the beginning of the title track where it just sounds like they submerge the speakers in, like, motor oil for a little bit. We're hoping it's motor oil and not, like, bile and viscera.
I mean, it might as well be at this point.
Not ruling it out. And while I like the atmosphere that the vocals create, it's just, I don't know, at points just too much, especially, like, the levels. Yeah. And it's constantly, like, a 2-level thing, too, where there's, like, someone that's growling underneath someone that's screaming, and they're both cupping the mic, and the mic is, like, wrapped in a wet towel.
Yep. And then they layer it with someone whispering. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and if I wasn't a fan of really disturbing, ugly death metal, I could see where a lot of this might be a turnoff to a lot of people. I guess my gripe would be slightly the same. You know, granted, I will say that this whole record sounds a whole lot better than the couple songs I heard off of the previous record, because that record's just really, really difficult to listen to. This is still a challenge, but I don't know. I would have tweaked just the riffs up a little more. Like, where they sit in the mix in comparison to where the vocals are, those vocals still tend to overpower them a little bit, and they're playing some sick shit. There is some absolutely sick riffing going on here. The chugs are about as low as they get, and, you know, once again, y'all know I'm a sucker for dissonance and chugs, and this record's packed full of it. I just wish I could hear them a little bit more. But at the same time, if that's the effect that this band is going for, and it is, that's the effect they're going for, and I can't really knock them. I just would have made some tweaks. Overall, though, believe it or not, I'm going to give this record 4 stars. I found it to be grossly entertaining, emphasis on the gross, but man, what a listen. The vocals are some of the most, like, putrid, disturbing things I've ever heard, and I've listened to Demolish. You know, like, there's a lot going on there, and I don't know, it's all very unnerving. There's tons of dissonance packed all over this thing. All of the tremolos are gnarly. They're all deep, low tremolos, except when they swirl and pulsate and you're not really sure what's happening. The transitions are basic, but the record moves like a pack of rabid deer through a forest, eating whatever animal they can find in sight and gargling and spitting it out on tourists. I don't know. It's pretty disturbing. But man, it's heavy. The songs are entertaining. Oddly enough, they kind of stand out from each other, which is really cool. Yeah, this record's disgusting, and I had an oddly good time with it. If you're into bands like Portal and Incantation, Fossilization, Morbid Angel, Suffocation, man, I'd even throw some Nails in there. There's some grindy little shit fits going on. If you like any of that, give this a whirl for yourself.
Yeah, honestly, I was kind of surprised by this one. Like, I was expecting heavy. I was expecting disgusting. I mean, that's almost the first thing I expect with this band. But honestly, this was, I would say, probably their best piece of work yet. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 as well. There's way more in the way of dynamics, riffs. There's stuff that is actually memorable. And it's not just, memorable for being a assault on your eardrums, and of course the most horrible looking album cover you can imagine, which, I mean, I can't even call it album art. It's just a picture of something disgusting. But yeah, like there's a little bit more substance to this, and it's probably like bile or blood or other fluids. But yeah, like the riffs really jump out. There are some legit catchy melodies all over this album. And honestly, like I kind of like this frantic pace on here. It keeps this album moving. Like I feel like if this album stalled out at any point, like they took an atmospheric break, you would kind of lose a lot of momentum on here, because this is all about just punishing you with just brutality throughout the entire listen. Yeah, some aspects are a little bit too much. Like the vocals are fucking crazy on here. Like they're borderline kind of ridiculous. But I mean, we're talking about a band called Pissgrave, so I suppose they're supposed to be ridiculous. And yeah, at times like the production can be like so suffocating and so distant that yeah, you can kind of like get disoriented in a way. But honestly, like for what they're going for, it works. And yeah, if you're a big fan again of like incantation, looped sounds of Bigfoot noises, you know, and bandsaws and car horns all at the same time. Just like noisy, disgusting death metal, like bands like Left Cross, very comparable. And I mean, I suppose some level of like war metal, like Diocletian, except like less blackened, like more focus on death metal. Check this out. Regardless if you're a death metal fan, you're in for an experience.
Yes.
Listening to this one. I can't say whether or not it's going to be a positive experience, but just check it out and, I don't know, figure it out for yourself. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships that are only 99 cents, and we do a members-only live stream as our lone perk. It's a pretty much a no-rules thing. We ask weird questions. You could ask weird questions. It could be like a theme or something like that. We'll let you know, generally, before we do it. Either way, memberships are the new way to support the channel. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our shirts and hats. That is linked down below. And, of course, if you would like to become a member of this thing that we started... Yeah, it's pretty okay. Yeah, there's a join button down there.
Yeah, hit that join button, or don't. Actually, it doesn't really matter. What matters most is the fact that you guys are here and you keep on swinging through and watching what we do. Album reviews, discography rankings, never-ending segments and multiple discussion panels, collection updates. God, I mean, all metal all the time. It's all we do anymore. That's it. I mean, I go to work, but... you know, still, metal, all the time. That's what we do. We do it for you guys, because we appreciate you being here. Thank you to all of our subscribers and everybody that talks to us, and all the bands and everybody that's made this into some gigantic experience that neither of us ever really thought it would be, but we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of content coming your way, so one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.